All right, welcome back. So we're going to start styling up our page now, right? We want to work on the font styling, the layout, start to make our HTML file look like our initial design. All right, so we'll just get started, same old thing. All right, I'll go through these steps all the times quickly, right? Just so everybody remembers. I just want to make this a little smaller, get our setup. Okay, so we've got our tags, right? We can hit our go live or, right? Whoops, where is it? Open with live server. All our tags are in place, right? Now, we didn't do any kind of layout. We just basically dropped everything in, okay? Now, let's take a look at our design. And here's the design, right? So I've done mine in Photoshop. You can be working in Adobe XD or Illustrator or Figma or Sketch, whatever you're comfortable with. Again, the only no-no is working in InDesign. And if you just can't do it in anything but InDesign, don't let me catch you working in InDesign. Do it in InDesign and then convert it into one of the other applications, right? Don't tell me you did it, but, you know, whatever. Eventually we'll have to get skills in design programs that really do translate directly into online formats. Okay, so we've got, right, you can see we've got a menu here, we've got some buttons, a logo, some text columns, this band across the thing, a background image, a couple of columns of text, 3 more columns of text, another background image. I don't know if you can see the tree back there. And then I grabbed the new Pulse footer. I'm not sure if I'm going to code that for this demo, but I might, right? But what I'm looking to do is I want this page to look as real world as possible, right? So when you see it, you can imagine, oh yeah, this I would expect this is what I would find online when I would go to their site. Okay. So how do we actually go about planning what we're, to make this somehow look like that, right? So the first thing to understand is what's known as the box object model. So we're going to go ahead and look it up, and I'm going to often talk about this developer mozilla.org or MDN. MDN is probably the best technical documentation, which is different than tutorials, right? Documentation is really all the rules and the syntax and all the real detail, right? But it can be a little tough to use to learn from. So if you find some other, like, WS3, whatever, tutorials, and you're more comfortable with those, that's fine to work with those. I'm going to, for documentation purposes and explanation, I'm going to point to MDN. So let's take a look. And the reason the documentation is kind of tough to deal with is because it's so dense, right? No one really wants to go through all this stuff, okay? We'll just work with this diagram right here for a minute. So what the box object model is trying to tell us is that everything that's going to go on our website will be in a box, right? Just like this purple box right here, right? We can have a menu, right? The menu is in a box, and then each item in the menu is in its own box, right? That's the basic point. I'm going to go ahead and show the developer tools in Chrome. And down here on the bottom, this lower right-hand corner, right? You'll see a little diagram of how the box object model works, right? So I'm going to click it up here. I'm just going to select, right, this item over here. And what I want you to pay attention to are the colors, right? So the blue, right, the innermost section right here, is the tightest wrap of the object, right? So I'm a paragraph, a short one. The blue represents the space that the paragraph is actually taking up in the CSS. Okay. Over here on the right, you'll see it defined as blue 808.29.86. Okay, back over. The next color, working our way out, right, on this box, is what's known as padding. Right? And padding is space around the object or the element, but it's inside the border. Okay, so we can make the object internally larger by adding padding top, left, right, and bottom. And it works around, we'll see the tag. And it's designated with green here, okay? The next item is the border, right? And that's a light orange. Now, this element doesn't have any border that we're looking at, so we don't see any of the light orange. But we see the gray line, and that gray line, if you'll see in the diagram over on the right, also indicates that's the edge, right? So we have our element inside, we have some padding around it to give it some spacing, and then we have a border, right? And then finally, we have this thing called margin. And margin is space that's outside the border, but still part of the overall element, right? And we use margin for spacing, primarily, right? Move things around, sort of get it aligned. So every element on the website is in a box, and each box has these characteristics: the size of the element, the padding, the border, if any, and a margin. So that's the box object model. So how does this thing impact our design, right? Well, simple enough. What we're going to need to do is we're going to need to plan out where our boxes should go. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to sort of plan out where the boxes, what boxes am I going to need in order to get my layout working, right? So I'm going to work in Illustrator for this part. It's just a lot faster. Because this is really, a sketch. It's not like a design file. It's really just more for me to plan out what I need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and save. And I'm just saving a JPEG. I'm going to put it out on my desktop, and then I'll use that in my Illustrator file. Okay, and there's my Illustrator file. Very nice. So let's just go ahead and my JPEG, and I'm just going to place it right there. We go. Okay. Okay. And I don't need this open. Okay, good enough, right? That sort of shows me what I need. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this. Okay. All right, and then we're going to pick a nice pinky pink thing for our lines. Okay, great. And I don't want any fill. All right. Okay, so now what I want to start to do is I want to just move this out of the way and draw shapes, right? Draw some rectangles around what I'm really going to need in a box, right? So for the whole background, I'll need one. Right, and then let's just maybe make these a little bit bigger so we just can see them a little better. Okay. All right, so I've got one around the whole background. Right, and I'm going to do one around the logo and one around each of these guys. All right, and I'll need one around the button. Technically, I'll need one around the text in the button. Right, and then I need one around the whole thing as the menu. Okay. Okay, so let's just... So you can see, right, I'm suddenly filling up, right? I'm going to have plenty of stuff to deal with. So I'm just going to jump ahead and finish these things off. Okay. All my boxes now I think are in place, right? And this just gives me sort of a roadmap for how I'm going to sort of go about trying to lay out my design. All right. So, and we can go ahead and, right, and just going to hide. Okay. So I guess hid my design, right? And this is kind of, what the shapes I'm going to need to deal with, right? So I've got my logo, my menu. The menu has a container around the whole thing. The button, the text in the button, the nav, right? Then I have sort of a section or here, and I've got a paragraph with text and another paragraph with text. I'll need to have some way to get them separated like this. Then I've got this cross piece, right, which is that red banner, and then I've got my 2 lines of text inside, and I want them to fit right within the edges so everything aligns. Then I've got the next row, and that's got a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, and then there's a little background pale panel behind each. And on this one I've indicated that, right, I have 2 columns. I didn't do that up here, but I probably should have. Right, then I move down to the black area, right? In the black area I have the 3 columns of text over the background photo. And then finally into the new pulse footer, again, it's another row. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, the logos, the social icons, and it looks like I've got a little leftover right there. Get rid of that. Okay. Right, with this sort of roadmap, now I kind of mentally have prepared myself as to how I can go about building each of these pieces and styling the text and aligning them and getting the pieces in place to lay out my site, right? And you need to build this stuff up in steps. You can't just sort of blast in there and, it's not like doing an InDesign project or another design project where you kind of just bring in some elements and you change the size and you push them around and, you change, until you sort of get something working. We did that in the design process, but now this is really a craft process where we need to plan what we're going to do, try it, see if we can get it working, and do piece by piece and sort of build up the complexity over time. All right? Okay.